Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. I am Michael Gracia, and I have a fantastic show for you tonight. A show I am very excited to have tonight. My guest, he is a retired Disney artist, and for those who know me well, know I am a big Disney geek. I have probably been to Magic Kingdom. I haven't had a chance to go to Disneyland yet, but I've been to Magic Kingdom probably about 15, 16 times in my life. Um, my wife and I are D23 members. I try to get a trip every couple of years in there. But I've loved the animation, been inspired by the artwork like many artists have been. And my guest tonight has done work on the artwork that you see on shirts and on merchandise. He's one of the marketing artists and retired now. But let me bring on Brian Blackmore. Hello.
Hello, Michael. How are you this evening?
Doing good. How are you?
Very good. Enjoying my evening here in Orlando.
Oh, that
My
is
retired evening.
That is nice. I love it down there. It is a place my wife and I have considered moving to when we eventually leave New York. Um, I have family down there. I had a good friend. He now lives, I think, in Washington State. They actually used to work. Him and his wife used to work for Disney World. That's how they met. So when I'd go down, I'd always make an effort to see them. But yeah, no, I love it down there. I love the area. But so number one, thank you for coming on. This has been very exciting for me to talk to you.
Thank you.
I mentioned to you before we went on, as a kid, one of my dreams was to always work for Disney, but I've been a fan of like mascots and marketing artwork for years with a goal of always being the guy who created like mascots for food, because I just always loved like the old cereal commercials as a kid, like Captain Crunch and all those guys.
Oh, yes.
And so to talk to someone who has done work that I have not had the chance to do, but like really respect and love is just an honor for me. So I just want to put that out there.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you. On behalf of all the artists that work at the merchandise division, I thank you.
Thank you. Because I'll be honest, 90% of my shirts are Disney shirts. All right.
I'm seeing you wearing one right now.
Yeah, I got the band concert. I literally have, I think last count was like 67 graphic tees.
Oh my!
And
goodness.
The majority of them are Disney.
Really?
Yes. I have to say, the majority of a lot of Mickey Mouse, a couple of Grumpies, a few Scrooge shirts, but yeah, it's a lot of Disney in my closet.
I have a lot of graphic shirts too, but this one right here, you can see.
Yeah.
Star Trek. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I've always been. In fact, I met William Shatner, I guess about 6 months ago here in Orlando. It was awesome. I got to meet him and speak with him for about 5 minutes. He signed this program that he did in an off-Broadway show up on Cape Cod, and everybody else that was standing there, they had all these Star Trek pictures to show them. And then when I walked up, my daughter was the one that actually found this program. And when I showed it to him, he flipped out. He couldn't believe it. And he was sitting there looking through it. And he says, "Oh yeah, I remember this guy, and I remember this actor." He says, "This person wasn't very nice." It was great, because William Shatner's a hero of mine. I think.
Yeah. I had an experience like that recently at 90s Con with William Russ, who played the father on Boy Meets World.
Oh, yes.
And I spoke to him, and when I went up to talk to him, I didn't talk to him about Boy Meets World because, number one, that's, I'm sure, what everyone talked to him about. But I'm a big sci-fi guy, and I love Stargate SG-1. And he did an episode in the first season. And I spoke to him about that, and I told him how great of, like, I think I used the word scumbag he was. He played this very charming, like, scummy guy, and he got excited. He lit up. He got excited. I think they like when you talk to them about things they're not known well for. And he's like, yeah, I died in that episode, right? I go, yeah, at the end, this is what happened. And then I said, and I just recently rewatched, and I can't remember the name now, the movie he did with Rucker Hauer back in like the 80s.
Was that with Sylvester Stallone?
No. This was Rucker Hauer played like a bounty hunter, and William Russ was like a cop, was a detective.
Oh, right.
I can't think of the name now, but
I can't think of the name.
Yeah, and he's like, he goes, I died in that too. I go, yeah. I think everything I watch you when you die in, But yeah, we had a great conversation.
And I think a lot of the times the actors, they do like it when you talk about their more obscure roles, because then that tells them that you're a fan.
Yeah.
It's like I met Leonard Nimoy too on another occasion. He was doing Fiddler on the Roof, and my sister and I went to see him, and I knew at that time, I think I was 12 years old, that he really didn't want to be known as Mr. Spock. So when I did get to meet him after the show, I told him, I said, Mr. Nimoy, I said, I really liked you in your role as Paris on Mission Impossible. And he was only on that show for about a year. But his face lit up, and he was very happy about that. And then he signed the program, and my daughter got me that program as well, too, because I'd lost both those programs because I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
And she was able to locate those programs, and I have them both autographed, and I got them in my closet right now.
Oh,
safely
that's awesome.
Stored away.
Yeah, that's all. I got a lot of signatures stored away too, in books and stuff. But I think that's a very fun experience. Just while we're on it, I didn't get his signature. This is a funny story. So as I mentioned again, my wife and I are D23 members, and we went down.
Mm-hmm.
Was it right before the pandemic, or I forget when, or maybe right after? We went to one of the events in Disney World where they do the thing about the parks, and right. Eric Goldberg was there, and I'm such a fan of Eric's. And
the Genie Man.
Yeah, and I have his book on animation, The Crash Course in Character Animation, and I have 2 copies actually. One I bought for myself. One of the schools I taught animation at got it for the class, and so I had an extra copy. And I was like, I should bring this down to see if I'm going to meet him to sign it. And I was like, nah, I'm never going to meet him. So my wife took a break and was walking around like outside after he spoke. And she saw him, and she came back, and I was listening to this panel, and she's like, Michael, I think you may want to take a walk outside. I'm like, no, I'm enjoying what I'm seeing here. She's like, no, you want to take a walk. And I'm like, okay, I'll get up. She's like, there's someone outside that you got to see. I'm like, okay, I get up. And I go, and I'm like, oh my God, like I see through the glass doors. And so he's talking to someone, and I just kind of like kill time walking around outside. Then after he's done talking to someone, I go up to him. I'm like, Eric, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you get this a lot, but I'm a huge fan. Your work, not just with Disney, but with like Warner Brothers and all, is one of the reasons I studied animation in school. And, I was very inspired by a lot of what you've done. And I said, I've read your book, The Crash Course, about twice now. I loved it. I even taught with it. You mind if I just grab a quick photo with you? And he was so polite. He took it. I have that memory now of just, we talked for a few minutes about animation and different things and stuff.
Yeah,
but I was like,
that's one of the things that I was so fortunate. I guess you could say I was with the company at the right time. Mm-hmm. During that 30 years. I got to meet 4 of the 9 old men.
Oh.
And Mark Davis, and Alice. I actually was on their Christmas list, so I got a Christmas card from them, which was pretty cool. But to be able to talk with them and get to know them, mm-hmm. It was a big honor. And I look at the newer artists now, and it saddens me that they won't ever get to know these people like the Ward Kimballs and the Mark Davises and the Alice Davises and the Ollie and Frank. I have books behind me here that are signed by them. Oh yes, the Villains book for sure. I don't know if you're familiar with the Disney Villains book, but
yeah, no, I know the book.
Yeah,
I don't have it, but I know it.
So my wife had Frank and Ollie sign it, and then again, because of the fact that I worked at Disney and I got to work with a lot of the other artists, Glenn Keane drew a beast in there for me.
That's
And,
awesome.
oh, it is, and it's right behind me. Maybe I'll show it either now or in a future broadcast.
Yeah, listen, you're already welcome back anytime. I'm gonna let you know that right now. But yeah, no, I'll tell you right now, Glenn is one of my all-time favorites.
Great guy.
I used to take a lot of what he threw up on YouTube, like interviews with him and whatever, and I would show those in my animation classes just because the knowledge, he spit out was just so amazing. And he was taught by, was it Mark? I forget. He was trained by one of the nine old men.
Frank and Ollie.
Was it Frank
No,
and
might have been Eric Larson.
I don't remember now, but
I'm pretty sure it was Eric Larson because when Don Bluth left the studios and he took a lot of the artists with him, that's what caused a panic with the Disney leadership, and that's when they called back in Eric Larson, and of course Frank and Ollie came back, and they were training the newer group of artists. Who, by the way, one of those newer artists was John Lasseter and Tim Burton. So, along with Glenn Keane and oh golly, I can't remember his name, Andreas Deja.
Okay.
But it was a critical point, and if Don Bluth hadn't left the studios, I believe there wouldn't have been that renaissance at Disney, where you had The Little Mermaid and of course The Great Mouse Detective and all of those films, because Don Bluth clearly with American Tail and some of the other films that came out, the subsequent films, they were placing higher up than Disney films. So it was a time, I think, that really was what propelled that new renaissance of Disney films.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I've never thought of it like that. But that makes sense. We got a comment from your sister.
Oh yes.
Hi Brian. Yes. Hi Michael. This is Ann, Brian's sister, who went to the Leonard Nimoy performance at Cape Cod Melody.
Yes.
So inspiring, so much fun. He always had the dream of being a Disney artist and realized that 100% the proof is that dreams do come true. Yeah, they do.
And it's funny, when I did get on as a freelancer, it was back in 1990. My sister Ann sent me it was a Mickey Mouse silk piece of work, and she quoted this phrase from, I don't know if you're familiar with The Incredible Mr. Limpet.
Did you ever see that? I've seen it. It's been such a long time, though I can't say I remember it well.
Well, there's a phrase in there where the Don Knotts character said, "Oh, I think this is just nature's way of correcting itself." And my sister put that quote in there. She said it's nature's way of correcting itself, because I was working in a warehouse in Texas, loading and unloading trucks. And that's how I got the opportunity to eventually become a freelancer for Disney. And then in '94 to come on full time.
Yeah. I want to get into like your background, but I got to tell you just another quick Disney story from me. I said I never got a chance to work for Disney. I never thought I had I told you this backstage. I never thought I was like Disney level. I actually worked, and I'm not counting the Disney store. I actually almost worked in the theme park as a teacher. I don't know if you know about this, but back in the mid to late 90s, Disney was starting the
Disney Institute.
Yeah, the Disney Institute, as kind of demonstrating how things were made. And I was studying, I was really into all the computer art at the time, learning. There was a 3D program called Infinity at the time that Disney wanted to demo. And I had a job interview set up, and I had to reschedule the interview, and then I did it over the phone, and just nothing ever came. I never heard back. but I could have
No,
had a chance to work for the Disney Institute teaching Infinity back in like '97.
that was just at the advent of computer
Yeah,
artwork at that time.
yeah.
Because when I started in '94, there were 10 of us in the department, and there was only 2 of us that had computers, and they were used for administrative things. It wasn't used for drawing at all.
Yeah,
And now when you look at us, or at least the department as it is now, I have a Cintiq right here.
I do too. If I look down, by the way, I'm not ignoring
Mhm.
you. I'm actually looking at your Instagram. So it's on my Cintiq right now, so I can see it better.
And it's a wonderful tool. And
Yeah,
now everybody draws on the computer. And I often
yeah,
say to people, I said, if Michelangelo were to show up at the Disney Studios when I have a job, arguably the greatest artist that ever lived, he wouldn't be able to get the job because he doesn't know the computers.
yeah, yeah. It's true. It's true. I taught the entire Adobe suite except for Dreamweaver for almost 20 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
when I would do that my animation class was in Flash at the
Yes.
time, but I was teaching traditional techniques and how to use Flash so that they actually were able to animate. I taught illustration in Photoshop and photo manipulation, illustrate, you name it. If it was out there, I taught all of that along with storytelling, like visual
Hmm.
storytelling, and a few other things. And Disney was always somehow brought into my classroom as
We
something to demo and talk about.
we used to do that when we were first starting out. When I first started out at Disney, the department was very small at that point, and we would attend Photoshop and Illustrator classes that were being provided by Adobe. And it was funny because the way the people would say it, the instructors would go through and see who was who and where they came from. And they would say, "Hey, there's Disney here. What are you guys doing here? You shouldn't be here." Well, no, we're artists and we need to learn all these new things
Yeah,
too. I work primarily in Photoshop and Illustrator. That's what I feel the most comfortable
those were my two main programs besides Flash. I love to
in.
animate too. I But now I use Clip Studio Paint basically.
Yeah.
I got rid of my Adobe sometime this year. I wasn't using all the software. It was just sitting there. I was paying like $50 a month, and I'm
Well,
like,
yeah, that's what I pay.
and I was like, it's not worth me paying all that if I'm using like one software. So
Yeah.
I said, I have Clip Studio Paint. I'll just get rid of Photoshop and everything because I was really only using Photoshop,
Yeah.
So, and it was to draw, so it wasn't like I was manipulating photos or anything. So
No, a lot of people are surprised too when you say that you work in Photoshop, and they go, "Are you working with photographs?" I said, no, no, no,
yeah,
no. You can illustrate in Photoshop and have your layers and everything else in there, and it's really quite enjoyable.
yeah, I love that software. I've been using it since '95. So
Hmm.
when I got rid of it, it was almost like losing a friend
Mm,
because I just knew it so well.
yeah.
And even though I have Clip Studio Paint, I don't know it like I could like literally close my eyes and tell you where to go in Photoshop without looking at it. Clip Studio
Hmm.
Paint, I'm still watching YouTube videos on how to, do stuff
Do
in.
you, do you remember Streamline?
Streamline. I don't know if I ever used that one. I used a program. My first program I learned in '94 in college was Director. I don't know if you know or
No,
remember that one.
no, no. That doesn't ring a bell with me.
Yeah.
But we would use Streamline. I started out as an inker. That's what my job was,
Okay.
at least for freelancing. I would get the pencil drawings sent to me in Texas and via FedEx. So whenever I'd see a FedEx truck pull up in front of the house, or my wife would say, "Hey, the FedEx truck just got here," I was like Pavlov's dog. It was like I knew I was getting something good. And so I started out, I was primarily an inker. And when I got called on full time, and I went from literally within a week's period of time, I went from wearing steel-toed shoes and jeans and shirt and driving forklifts and loading and unloading trucks to wearing a tie and a suit in an office environment. And I was not used to that. I was always used to being busy on my feet. And
Hmm.
I remember that first year at Disney, I went from 170 to 215. It
Wow.
was an amazing weight. Then you're getting the cookies, and the ladies would say, "Oh, well, somebody brought in brownies," and we'd run down there, and You're not exercising. You're sitting at a desk.
Yeah.
But it was a very exciting time, and as my sister said, it's been a dream of mine since I was age 5.
Yeah. Well, since you brought that up, let's talk about like your childhood with art, and how you got into art. Who were some of your inspirations? Like obviously Disney, but outside of Disney, what else were you looking at?
Well, just as you and I were mentioning in the backstage,
Mm-hmm.
Hanna-Barbera obviously was the fast food of Saturday mornings.
Yeah.
And all the shows, I mean, I could go on, the Jetsons, the Flintstones, the Wacky Racers, you could go on and on, Top Cat,
Yeah.
Yogi Bear. I loved that style of work. And some people would be, at least at Disney, I think, would probably be a little surprised. The best animated cartoon shorts, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
were done by the MGM studios in the 1940s with Tom and Jerry.
Oh,
If you look at
absolutely.
those Tom and Jerry cartoons, are brilliantly animated,
Yeah.
and you could stop them on a screen cap, and everything is just so beautifully done. There's no mistakes. And an interesting thing is when you look at and you read the credits, it'll say Fred Quimby was the one that designed it or directed, but Hanna-Barbera, they started out at MGM,
Yeah.
and they were the ones that were working on those films, those cartoons.
Absolutely. They were a great team. We got Renee Blackmore saying Johnny Quest, which was
Oh yes, that's my daughter.
that is. Listen, I just picked up. I don't know if you know this, but they just started new Johnny Quest comics and like comic books, and I haven't read
Yes,
them yet, but I got the first 2 issues on
yeah,
my
Johnny
table.
Quest, and I'm talking about the original Johnny Quest from the
Yeah,
1960s.
yeah,
Again, a Hanna-Barbera cartoon fan.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh, and then we got your sister saying peanuts.
Yes.
I got my blanket behind me here, which I need to fix on one side. But yeah, I got my
Oh
peanuts
yes.
blanket. I use this just to cover the chair usually, so if I don't hit like the leather when it's cold or whatever, So, um, but yeah, no, I have that. If I turn the camera, which I can't right now, I have a whole collection of comic strip collection books.
Hmm.
Hagar the Horrible, a lot of Peanuts up
Oh,
there,
loved
Calvin and
Hagar.
Hobbes. Like, I am such a like I've always considered myself a strip artist over a comic book artist, but because I just love strips so much. But I
Well, I
love
wanted to be a comic strip artist too. I'd
yeah.
come up with several strips that I was trying to sell
Mm,
um, to the syndicates, but it was really tough. And I'm talking about in the 1980s. It was a
yeah,
really tough nut to crack. But if you look at the history of some of the some of the comic strips, there was a lot of partnerships.
mm,
Like Dick Brown, who did Hagar the Horrible, was also High and Lois,
yep,
and Mort Walker, who did Beetle Bailey, was also involved with um, Hagar Horrible. If you look at the Sarge from Beetle Bailey, he looks the same as Hagar. So
yeah,
yeah, there's a lot of that partnership,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then of course Charles Schultz, he's the preeminent
yeah.
illustrator.
And you mentioned Glenn Keane earlier. His father's
Yes,
Family
the
Circus.
Family Circus.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's a big. Sorry, is there? Sorry, comment, but there's it's just a big group of people. It's like a giant family. Everyone knows each other. Everybody's friends with
Oh
each other, and
yes.
everybody helps each other out.
And the same way can be said at Disney.
Yeah,
There's so many people that I've known through the years that have either left the company or retired, and we still keep in touch,
yeah,
and we share information and sometimes even opportunities to work on other things um, outside of Disney. Uh, it's a time that I'll never uh, ever look back upon as being anything but spectacular.
yeah,
It was a dream. It was a dream of mine. It was watching Walt Disney, or as we called him, Uncle Walt, in the Wonderful World of Color. And my mother was she was really big into cartoons.
mhm,
And on Saturday mornings, we would all run upstairs to mom's bedroom, and Dad would be out putzing around the yard doing yards work and stuff. And we'd watch the cartoons on Saturday mornings. And so we're talking about Bugs Bunny, of course, and then the parade of Hanna-Barbera cartoons. But the thing for me was when the Wonderful World of Color would come on, and they would show cartoons, especially when the announcement was made. And next week on the Wonderful World of Color, we have Donald Duck, and Donald was my first love for Disney, and because he has a personality that's close to everybody. Mickey was more of the good guy, he never made bad things, and Donald could be though all those things, the things that we are, imperfect. And so it was at age 5 I decided that's what I want to do, and I told my mom and dad that, and they were always very supportive of it, especially my dad. He would always say to me, "Sonny boy, let him know that you're an artist. Wherever you're at, always let him know you're an artist." And it has worked for me in so many ways, and opened more doors for me. Even when I was in the military, I was a air crash firefighter, and I let them know I was an artist, and the fire chief immediately put me to use, painting signs for Fire Prevention Week and doing all kinds of things like that. And again, it opened up more opportunities for me outside of the normal realm of what my scope was. And this, when I left the military, this was in '82, I went to Texas, and where I went to stay with my brother. I was heading back to Massachusetts, where I'm originally from. And he called me and he said, "Look, you need to come on down here and visit Texas." The economy was horrible at that point. And I said, "Well, I really want to get back to Mass because I was thinking about going back to college." And he said, "No, just give me 2 weeks." So I moved down there, and 12 years later, I met my wife there, and we had our daughters there. And uh, as I was telling you, I let the warehouse people know that I could do artwork. So they had me doing some things in the distribution center, T-shirts for special events and things. And the human resources director at that time for our company, at least in that distribution warehouse, her name is Lori Top, and she said, let's send your artwork up to the headquarters in Chicago and see if perhaps they could utilize you for their quarterly magazine." And it was called Pace. So she did that. I put together some artwork, and she did that. And I guess about a week later, the people called that do the publication. They said, "Look, we're a magazine that does medical supply articles and latest technologies in the medical field. We don't utilize cartoonists." And they said, "But we're interested in Brian in the fact that we're going to start doing this thing at the end of the magazine where it's going to be called After Hours. And we want to use Brian as our guinea pig." And so I have the magazine right here. And this is the magazine.
Well, I'm going to give you the screen so you can see it. Okay.
Yeah, this is the magazine. So they called me on the phone and they asked me some questions. And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to, work for Disney." And I mentioned some other things too. And they said, "Okay, cool. Now, could you send us a photograph?" And my wife took a picture of me at my art table and sent it. And anyway, here's the magazine, and there's the article right there.
Oh, wow.
It's called After Hours, and of course, this was a comic strip that I was working on. It was called Man of the House, about a father who stays at home, raises his daughters while his wife works as an executive. And it got shot down. But then it didn't matter because I came to work one time into the warehouse one of the times, just shortly after the article came out. And there was a letter that was in my box, in my mailbox, and it was from Disney. And it was this right here. This here it is. It's written in felt. You can see it's written in green felt, and it's from Russ Farrell. And it's quite explicit in what it says. It says, as you can imagine, most artists would like to work for Disney. We are very picky about the talent we hire. Talent is a must, but there's more than talent. Attitude and getting along with others is just as important. Presently, my department has no openings, but I am aware of a department within the company that is presently looking for talent. Pass on to Brian my info, and I can put him in touch. Thank you, Russ Farrell. And here I saw that, and I was beside myself because I'd been trying to get on with Disney, writing letters and things like that for all those years. So I thought, wow, here's my opportunity.
Yeah.
So I contacted this gentleman. His name is Brian Lum, and he gave me an address, and he said, "Yeah, mail it to this address." And he gave me this certain address, and the portfolio got lost in the mail. So, which was a good thing because it started a conversation. Because I called them, they gave me their phone number, and we started corresponding back and forth. And they said, "Well, if the portfolio gets to you, mail it back to us, or if we get it, we'll let you know." Well, the portfolio did come back, and I promptly turned on and sent it. And then not very long afterwards, I got the portfolio back, and I had this letter right here. And if you notice, it says, enclosed, you'll find the artwork you submitted to us. We appreciate your interest. We feel that your work at this time does not meet the exceptionally high standards established by the Walt Disney Company. And he was right. He was absolutely right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought, wow, that was my chance. So then Maria, my wife, said, well, look, let's go to Florida. It would be nice to go to Disney, or not to Disney, but to go down to Florida and see what it's like, because she was ready to try something new outside of the state of Texas. So we camped. We took a car, and our kids were both born at that time, and so Maria's mom took care of them while we made the trip down to Florida in our little Mazda station wagon. And so we get there, and we were checking out warehouses of the company that I was working for. They had varieties. There was one in Tampa, there was one in Miami. And she was thinking that maybe I could get an opportunity to work in one of those warehouses, and then we could move to Florida. So anyway, we were on our last day there in Florida, and I said, look, we're at Disney World. Let's just go. And we did. It was on a Saturday, and we got there at 9 o'clock in the morning. We camped at Yogi Bear Campground on 192. I'll never forget that. And so I say, here, there's the Hanna-Barbera connection.
Yeah.
So we were there, and it was on a Saturday night, so the park closed at 1 o'clock, and we're in Toontown, Mickey's Starland, which became Mickey's birthday. And we're in Mickey's house, and I'm looking around, and there's a pennant above Mickey's bed that says Massachusetts, and I'm thinking, hey, I'm from Massachusetts. This has got to mean something. And there's a picture of Walt Disney on there, and it said my dad. And I looked at it, I got choked up. I said, I was so close. I was so close. And so Maria says to me, why don't you go and visit the office while you're here? I mean, you've got their phone number. I thought, oh, they're going to think I'm stalking them or something. She said, no, you need to do this. So it was Monday morning, and we were packing up. We drove across to the 7-Eleven. My wife wanted to get some ice for the ice chest that we had in the car. And there was a phone booth right there, and she says, call the number. So I get on there, and sure enough, Brian answers the phone, and I tell him where I'm at, and I could hear hesitation in his voice. I said, look, I just want to come by and just visit. That's all I want to say. I just want to come by and visit. So he said, well, stay right there. And about 5 minutes later, the phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's the secretary, and she says, you have an appointment with Mr. Seppala. And she gave me the address, and sure enough, we packed up and drove on over there. And then Maria says to me, well, I'm going to go to Bennigan's. Drop me out to this Bennigan's. This is for you. This is your thing. I walk in here into this Disney office. I'm seeing the stuff all over the walls, and it was just amazing. And then Mark Seppala comes out to get me. And we go to his office, and he's only been on the job maybe 6 weeks or so. He was brand new manager. And we were sitting down, we just got to doing just, a natural kind of chatting. And we both realized that we're both from Massachusetts. So that was kind of cool. That kind of melted the ice a little bit. And he said, what was your name again? I said, Brian Blackmore. He goes, you're the guy whose portfolio got lost in the mail. So it worked out that the portfolio was lost. So anyway, he says, do you ink? And I said, yeah. He says, okay, well, if you can ink to the style that I need, I'll keep you busy. And sure enough, it developed into an inking job for them for 4 years.
Wow.
And um, I was still working in the warehouse, doing that on the weekends and weeknights, and going to college too. And so one day I'm driving my forklift, and we had a comfortable relationship. I knew when he would call, he'd say, okay, Brian, I'm sending you this piece of artwork. It's Mickey Mouse. I need you to do thick line. It's going to be going on a loose side box or whatever. And so they said, Blackmore, line 3. So I drive up my forklift, jump off, go over, and I know it's Mark. And I said, what's going on, Mark? And he says, hey, you ready? I know exactly what he said, but I pretended stupid. I said, what do you mean? He says, I have an opening for 4 people, and I want you to be one of them. And I said, how long have I got? He says, you got 2 weeks to make a decision. And I said, okay. And so, yeah. And then 1994, I started in 90 as an illustrator or as an inker. 94, I went to full time at the staff there, where there were only 10 of us. And after about 2 weeks, I was doing inking. That's all I did.
Yeah.
And that's what they hired me for. Then Mark came to my office and he threw a bunch of model sheets down on the table. And he says, I need you to be a character artist. I said, Mark, I said, I don't know how to draw my characters. He said, well, you're going to learn here. So at that point, it was all you had to, you're thrown in the pool, so to speak, and you had to learn how to swim. But through the years, as the program developed, there was an educational program. We had Ralph Kent, who is a Disney legend, and he worked with us. He was in our department. He developed a training program so that future artists that came into the department, who are now the leadership in the department, went through that program. But that's it. I kind of went long on the story.
No, it's okay. Listen, no, it's a great story. It's always nice to hear how people, kind of get into the positions that they get into in the art world. It's because so many people, it's so difficult to get your foot in the door, and really just because you lost, your portfolio got lost. It was something that they remembered. It was you became memorable to them. It's great.
Yeah, because we would literally get, because I moved into a position where I was also looking at portfolios after a time being there. And we would literally get in hundreds of portfolios a year, hundreds of people. Some of them were very, very good. Some of them were not so good. And it taught me to look critically at people's work, but also to be encouraging too. Because when I look at how my work looked at the time, I wouldn't have given myself a job. And then it just makes me more open to people who may not draw so well right away, but with the right kind of inspiration, the right kind of training, they can become better.
Yeah. I like I said, I taught for years, and one of my greatest feelings, I guess, as a teacher, is always when you see the student finally get it, and they haven't been drawing well for however, now all of a sudden their artwork just changes because something just connected.
It clicks. It clicks. And that's exactly what it is, Michael. Something clicks. Because I look at the drawings, and I've kept a lot of those drawings, and you can see some of them I've featured on my Instagram page where I've gone over it. I've not traced over it. I've done a layover to correct it, to make it look this is how it should look. But even then, and I think I can speak for most of the artists in the department, when you draw something 5 minutes later, you look at it and go, oh, I got to redo that. You become so, everything has to be so right, but you don't want to overwork it, because obviously in those initial sketches, there's life in those drawings. And when you start to clean it up, you don't want to become too tight in it, because then it loses its appeal. That's why I think it's so important, and I mentioned this in Instagram, about storytelling and appeal. I always go for appeal. You can keep the integrity, can be still there, but don't be afraid to push it a little bit to get that appeal.
Let me go to a couple of comments real quick. First of
all,
are
these my family?
I don't know, Vicky Harmon Fox.
Vicky,
always great to hear your stories. Your sister mentioned that you drew Peanuts characters on the walls of the boys' bedrooms. They were incredible, but sadly, our house is no longer there.
Yeah. You know what? I got to tell you, Ann, I don't remember. I don't remember two of those.
And
But I'll take your
those
word for it.
and those Peanuts characters are some of the hardest to draw. I
Oh yeah.
always think that. And talking about inspiration, a good friend of mine, Michael Cook, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He does the Chucky Chicken cartoons on YouTube and stuff, and he's got his own podcast, which is really great. And he says, "Hey, Mike and Brian, first off, Brian, your drawings are how I draw Mickey and the gang to this day. I'm a huge fan and would totally join a class if you held one. Thank you for the many years of inspiration."
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you
Thank
might
you
need to
very much.
hold an online class. I would join.
Would you? Well,
Honestly, yeah, I think I would. I would love to do that.
one of the things that I wanted to do for years when I was at Disney was to get the East Coast and the West Coast to come together for a character artist summit. And the idea was for us to get together, not to compare the differences that we have in our work, but rather to share the commonalities of what we have, and the joy and the excitement that we have of drawing the Disney characters. Because when you think about it, I was probably one of maybe 40 people tops in the company that was our job to draw Mickey and the gang
Yeah.
for the merchandise. So it was a very small family, and it was to me important that we would get together and to discuss, or even having an exchange program where you had maybe two artists from the West Coast go to the East Coast and the East Coast go to the West Coast, just to get an understanding of how things are done.
Yeah. That sounds like a good idea.
So having a class like this
Yeah.
with all of us as artists getting together and
Yeah.
just talking about Disney, or just talk about Hanna-Barbera and our thoughts. I think
Yeah.
to me that's exciting.
I love that stuff. I don't teach really anymore. I still do some private tutoring.
Hmm.
But I because of the job I have, I can't like actually teach right now. It would be a conflict of interest.
Hmm.
Um, but I would love to sit into a class of someone like where, you know, not that I have issues really drawing the Disney characters, but like I mentioned to you, I always have the repetitive, like I don't do them repetitively. I draw them every once in a while that I just want a better foundation on
Yeah.
something like that. That even if you did a pre-recorded video and sold it for like $50, I would, you know, pay. No, listen, I mean, we had on actually Michael Cook was on with Dave Alvarez, who has worked
Oh
on
yes, I know of his work.
yeah, he
I see
does
him on Instagram.
yeah, he has got a lot of like he's got a couple of Looney Tune things that he's recorded and how to draw them, and I actually bought one of them because
Mm. It's great
I
work.
yeah, I love his work and I just wanted to see his technique. I used to read the Looney Tune comics when he drew them.
Yeah.
And even before I knew who he was, like I connected with him.
Mm.
I was a fan of what he was doing, and because I was a fan, I just wanted to watch an artist that I respected and loved the work of, and how their process worked and how they attack artwork. And I
And
thought it was
on
great.
on that thought too, I share the same thing. When I was attending school or college at the University of Texas in Arlington,
Yeah.
um, I took an art course, and there was a bookstore, obviously, that you could go to, and inside it were these Foster Brooks. Are you
Yeah,
familiar with
I
Foster?
got quite a few still.
Yes, Foster Brooks. And he had this one book was on how to draw Donald Duck. And I looked at that book, and again, me being a Donald Duck fan, I said, this is the way Donald should be drawn. It was just so full of life and so appealing. So I immediately opened up the book because I wanted to see who did it. And it was this gentleman by the name of Peter Emsley. And Peter, in my opinion, as well as many of my contemporaries, feel that Peter was the best Disney artist for drawing the characters. His characters, and that's where I would aim for, was Pete's style.
Mhm.
So when I got the job at in Florida, the marketing department, Pete was in the marketing department,
Oh,
not
wow.
in the merchandise, in the marketing department.
Yeah.
So I remember the first time we were going out to lunch, a group of us, and it's probably about 10 of us. And Ralph Kent, the Disney legend, was in our department, and he knew Pete. In fact, he had hired him. And he said, "Yeah, Petey's going to come and join us." I mean, I was just like shaking. I'm getting to meet the guy who's, you know, that's the man.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting next to him, and Pete says, "Yeah," and he starts drawing on the back of this menu. He's drawing how he drew Mickey Mouse, and I'm just sucking this all in, just like a sponge. And so then I said, "Would you be willing to give me some pointers?" And he said, "Sure, let's do that." So I went a couple of times to the office. It was just over. It's the SunTrust Bank, which is now the Partners building over at downtown Disney. He was up on the third floor.
Okay.
And anyway, make a long story short, he ended up deciding to go back to Canada, and he left the company. And I was heartbroken because I'd only worked with him for like a couple of times, but he still worked as an inspiration for me, and I could always pick out his work whenever I saw it on a publication or something. I said, "Yeah, that's Pete Ernst's work."
Yeah.
And I hope that he's listening. I hope he follows you, because it's true. His work is just.
I'll have to look him up and see maybe I can get him to pop on and chat with him.
Yeah, it's EMSISLIE. EMSLIE.
All right, I'll have to look him up, definitely.
He was teaching at the Sheridan College, last I heard, up in Canada.
Yeah, I'm familiar with them.
Yeah, and I think he was in charge of their character animation program.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Tell him I said hello.
I will. I actually know a few people that went to that school. So
it's a good school.
Yeah. Let's go to a couple of comments. We got Richard. Is it Bolander? Said, I joined late. Did you tell him about the drawings you did for the high school year?
Oh yeah, Richard and I've known Richard since 7th grade. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about Richard is how we became friends. He had relocated back to Harwich, Massachusetts, where his dad was a detective in the police department. But prior to that, his dad's beat was Burbank, specifically Disneyland area, and he got to know Walt Disney in those years. And of course, Richard got to meet Walt Disney. He was very young when he shook hands with Walt, but when Richard moved to our school and I came to find out, I said, "Oh, this is my new buddy." I wanted to ask him all kinds of questions. This guy went to Disneyland and he shook hands with Walt Disney. And Richard just retired from the Cape, I guess 4 or 5 years ago. He lives just up north here in Ocala, and we get together. In fact, we just got together last week. We played pool over here at the clubhouse here where my home is. So, hello, Richard.
We got this is Robert saying, "Hey." Your sister says, "Yes, have an artist salon." And hey, you're stupid, who actually is a really talented writer. His name's David. He'll be coming on soon.
Cool.
You got to get him on about his new book. It's called Sillyville issue. I think it's issue 2.
I wonder why he has that. Why he has those exclamation points for Harwich.
He's up there though in the area.
Oh, then he must be, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Rob is my daughter's fiance.
Oh.
So all your people here are all my family.
Hey, listen, that's fine. That's great. And more people watch it, and they could share great stories on the side. Gotcha. But
one of the things about my job as a merchandise artist, it's changed. It's evolved over the years. We started primarily doing merchandise where we would take something from beginning to the end.
Yeah.
Whether it was a T-shirt graphic or a major program where the graphics appeared on cups and T-shirts and photo albums and things. And as the assignments were given to you, you would take the project from beginning to end, meaning you would conceptualize it, you would draw it out, you would complete the illustration, it would go to the vendor. then the sample would come back to you, and then you would look at it to make sure the colors are correct. Nothing had been done to change the illustration if it had to be because it had to fit a certain way on the product. We would do turnarounds. Nowadays, of course, you've got 3D programs where you can literally sculpt in the computer and you don't need to have turnarounds. In fact, there's some samples that the Donald right back over there.
Yeah, see, hold on, I'll give you the screen and see if we can see it.
And I made sure that this was lit up here. If you look over here, that's
the
Jedi Mickey.
Jedi Mickey. I was going to say, I have a little mini figure of him somewhere.
So I designed this, and I wanted to make sure that the light would glow. So that's a special light. I can flip off the switch. See,
that's awesome.
Flip it on. And then over there is this is a commemorative piece for the 50th anniversary of Jungle Book.
Okay. Wow.
And then we get opportunities sometimes to sculpt other things. So I sculpted this Captain Mickey.
That's great.
Which was a lot of fun. I don't want to show it too much because my colleagues might look at that and say, "Oh, you should do that over again." and of course, you get opportunities to have your work without you knowing it, getting displayed on things. And here's one, and I think I posted this. I didn't even know that this was meant for a T-shirt.
Oh, nice.
But it ended up being on a pizza box. So if any of our guests order pizza out there, they get it in this pizza box.
That's awesome.
But see, people don't even know that, and they'll never know who did the work. But it's gratifying for us to see the people purchasing the product, and it means that they like it. And I think, speaking for you too, I think there's nothing more gratifying than to have people buying your product because it really does make you feel good. It's an ego booster.
Yeah,
because it makes you feel like, hey, you did something right.
I actually did speaking of that, I forgot to do my normal. I was so excited to talk to you. I forgot to do my normal pitches that I normally do.
Why don't you go to them?
Well, I don't have the books close to me right now, but
you were supposed to show what you're doing.
Yeah, my where are the books anyway these days? I've been cleaning up the studio, so it's a little messy right now. But my book, The Whimsical Whiz,
yes,
that's out on Amazon right now, and you could go if you go to at the Whiz Comic on Instagram or Facebook. You can read all the strips that are up right now. Today's strip that came out, they come out every Wednesday by 9 a.m. Eastern. I post, and it's actually a Disney joke today. It's a Scrooge joke. I will say that because Scrooge is my favorite character, but he's not in it. It's just a reference to him, and it's just kind of funny how it coincided with you coming on. It wasn't like an actual setup or plan.
It wasn't planned.
No, it wasn't planned, but it was pretty cool. And also check out boldventurepress.com, or you can find that on Amazon. I have my, the Zorro books I worked on. Was it Zorro's Swordplane Romance is the new book. There's also Zorro Exploits, and check out what is the other? I'm sorry, I'm just all the stuff I normally have next to me. A Kid in a Comic, the newspaper. You go to akidinacomic.com. The Wiz is now appearing in A Kid in a Comic right now, and that's all my pitches that I do.
See, I think that's awesome though. I like hearing about other artists too. That we're all in this together. It's just that we chose different paths, but it was like this when I left the warehouse. I would show the work to the people at the warehouse, because when I do the inkings, I would take it to the warehouse and ship it from through Federal Express at the warehouse.
Yeah.
And the people would, my colleagues at the warehouse, they would like it, and for them it was fun. it's not until I came to Disney that I realized all these people here feel the same way I feel.
Yeah.
And it's like coming home. Does that make sense?
No, it's one of the reasons I actually started this show. I started this show during the pandemic to talk with other artists because I missed going to conventions. I missed hanging out with them. But I love to, and it's primarily for indie like comic artists because that's the world I live in.
Yeah.
But I love to see what other people are working on. I love to make sure that other people are learning about other artwork that's out there, other
Yes.
comics. Speaking of which, I'm going to get to a couple of comments in a moment. But that's the thing, and it's one of the reasons. Like I had, I don't know if you're familiar with Ray Lago, but I had him on a few weeks ago, and he was talking how he shared a studio with a few artists, and I'm like, I never shared a studio with artists, but
Mm.
I've worked in studio settings, and I remember my time in college where my friends and I would just get together and do our work, whether
Yeah.
it was painting or drawing. And like, I love the environment where you get to hang out with other people who understand just your love and your passion. And,
Mm-hmm.
if you see something that, hey, that's cool. How did you do that? They're going to
Mm-hmm.
sit down and chat with you about it and just
Right.
show you. And there's no like competition. It's just, everything is just so cool, and I love that about the art industry and the artists that I meet, and I become friends with so many people, whether from doing this or going to conventions. That
Mm.
my either my text messages or my Facebook or Instagram messages, people are always talking to me about this stuff. So I love that I get to chat with people about
Mm.
about
And
these things for that reason.
that's one of the things that I liked about being in the office environment is that it was like being in college, almost like a fraternity sorority kind of thing.
Yeah.
You, when I retired this past January, literally the people that were in the office, a lot of them weren't even alive when I started working at Disney.
Yeah.
And so now you have that turnover. But there's still that, even though there's years that separate us, there's still that magic. I can't really describe it to people that aren't in that creative realm, but you can feel their hunger and they feel your hunger.
Yeah.
And together, it's like we push each other to
Yeah.
try different things. Um, I started painting for the galleries 25 years ago for the Disney galleries
Mhm.
on a whim. They were looking for artists, and so the galleries were. And then I said, well, and I'm a Disney artist, so let's see how it goes. And I started painting, and I had no painting experience prior to that. But as I started looking at the other artists and asking them questions, and they showed me how to paint or made some suggestions, and now it reaches a point where I'm doing things other than Disney. I'm a huge Jaws fan,
Mhm.
huge Jaws fan, and I, I I love the poster, but I always felt it didn't really quite reflect the true nature of Jaws. And
Mhm.
my favorite scene in the movie, as for probably most people, is the Indianapolis scene, where you
Mhm.
have the orca and it's dark out and the shark's out there and he's telling the story. Quint's telling the story. So I decided I wanted to make my own version.
Okay, hold on. Let me give you the
Yeah.
screen on that.
So you
Oh
can see
wow.
there.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
wanted to get the shark in there,
That
but
is
then
so cool.
you look at here the orca and see I told you about the falling star.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You want to share that little nugget?
Sure. There's Brody, and then I have Quint right there, and there's Hooper right there.
That is awesome. That
But
is a gorgeous piece.
thank you. The story that you wanted me to talk about was Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were huge Disney fans, uh, and I mean Walt Disney, huge fans of his. And out of respect for Walt Disney, if you look at most of the Spielberg Lucas films, you'll see a falling star that will be in the back. And you can see it in Jaws right during that one scene that I had right there. There's that
Yeah.
falling star. And that's their way of saluting Walt Disney, when you wish upon a star. And you'll see it in Indiana Jones films, and you'll see it in a lot of their films. Again, because to them, Walt was the innovator. He and his group of artists just what Walt Disney. I mean, I could go on. I could go on about Walt Disney. I always made it a point to, especially to the younger artists, I would say, look, we're character artists, but we're also supposed to be historians about Walt and this company and the characters, because we need to know what the characters can and cannot do. Yeah. Like, for example, the Fab Five are listed, they're considered actors. So you can have them dressed up in any period type. They can be dressed as astronauts, they can be dressed in a multitude of ways because they're actors. But when you look at the other feature film actors, and when you talk about Cinderella or Snow White or even Ariel, they are a period piece. You don't have Ariel dressed in an astronaut outfit or a bikini. You don't have Snow White doing any of those things outside of the time period that she's in.
Yeah.
So these are things that we as the artists have to know in order that we do this merchandise and we do it correctly. We have a lot of people out there that are extreme fans, and we want to make sure that they are happy, because everybody else, the not so big fans, they fall in line and they love what they see. But if you go after that special group, they're the ones that will really push you to make sure that the work looks correct.
Yeah, you're right. I've made comments to my wife about certain things I've seen of characters, but you know, one of the things, you know, you're right about how you can put them anywhere, because some of my favorite stories about you know, like shorts are not them dressed as regular people, you know, like some of my favorite cartoons are the Humphrey Bear cartoons.
Those are my favorites. Breezy Bear?
Yeah,
Breezy Bear.
Yeah, and you have Donald as like that one. He's not the park ranger in that. He's
a farmer. He's
farmer. He's a farmer. But there's a part. So like I like when they do other things with them, and you know, I'm a big Donald guy. Well, Duck. I'm a big Duck fan in general, but yeah, no, like I love that stuff. And you have an image on your Instagram. And I'm going to show your Instagram in a moment. I hope it's okay taking up the time. But I don't remember where it is on your Instagram, but it's like a frontier version of Mickey. And I am such a fan of like that time period, like, you know, the Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone type of time period. So like when I see characters dressed like that, I kind of, you know, and characters that I love, I kind of geek out for.
Yeah.
It's so great. And
I did that for Wilderness. I think that was for Wilderness Campground.
Okay, I've never been. We stayed once at, is it Copper Creek? And they have the totem of, like, you know, Humphreys on the bottom or whatever.
Yes.
And it's Donald. We bought the replica of the totem. It's in our living room.
So I did the remake of it, because obviously the totem pole that's inside of Wilderness Campground, Wilderness Lodge, the Mickey was huge and the other characters were not. So I wanted to make sure that it was done to the correct sizes.
Really? Okay.
Yes. In fact, I think that I have in my Instagram account, I have the turnarounds that I drew of that particular totem pole.
Yeah. All right, I'll have to check it out.
Yep.
Let me get to comments, because they're building up. So David Alvarez, who's a very talented comic book artist, good friend over here, says, so cool to see Brian's studio. Brian's an incredible artist. Walt Disney himself would be proud. Incredible one about Michael's channel. David's been on here a couple of times too.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Fred Fox, hi, brother from.
Yeah, it's my buddy.
Oops. And then was it your sister? One year we bought 10 of the special edition Sailor Mickey stuffed animals and put them in the toy. Oh, that's nice. I like.
Yeah, I got to work on the Sailor Mickey balloon for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which was, as I mentioned earlier, you get opportunities to work on a variety of different things, and that was one of the things that was thrilling for me, was to be able to work with Macy's and helping to develop the balloon. We had this one artist before me. His name was Jeff Eversole. And Jeff was the one that was initially working on the balloons, and unfortunately, he left the company with the cutbacks. And when he did, it got handed to me. So then I took up the reins on it, and Disney flew me up, or my office flew me up to Macy's for the day to look at the clay sculpture, because their balloons start off as clay sculptures, believe it or not. And I showed up, looked at the clay sculpture, made some adjustments on it, and then they flew me back that same day. And then when the balloon was completed, I had to go with a representative from Disney Cruise Line to a undisclosed area in the Midwest to look at the balloon fully blown up, and make sure the character was correct. I was kind of like the final sign off. One of the things that I always am very careful about is when I draw Mickey in his eyes, I always make the eyelids a little bit heavy, the eyelashes, which emphasize the eyes. And I was looking at this balloon, and they didn't do that. And I said, no, we got to add some eyelashes on it. And I said, well, do you have the model? And they had the small invert model of it, and I was over there showing them. And then one of the people comes up and said, hey, do you think you could just do it on the balloon? And I said, what? He said, yeah, we can lower the balloon, and we'll put you on a step ladder, and then you just draw in the eyelashes on the balloon. Now, the eyes are about 6 feet tall. This is a huge balloon. I have video of it, and I'm going to be posting it on my Instagram.
Oh, I can't wait to see that.
And I got up there and drew it on one side, and I just told the guy because they paint these balloons. Those aren't manufactured colors. They actually paint the balloon.
Wow.
So the gentleman who was in charge of painting the balloon was at the bottom of the ladder watching me draw it, and I said, just take this, replicate it on the other eye, flip it and replicate it. He said, okay, and sure enough.
Wow. That's a very interesting. I didn't know they painted them. I know people who have like walked and performed in the parade, but I don't know much about the balloons.
They asked me if I wanted to walk the balloon, and I said no. I said, but can I have other people walk it? And they said sure. So my brother Chuck and his wife, who are up in Massachusetts, they went down to New York, and they walked the Mickey balloon.
That's awesome.
On its first time out. And the interesting thing is, both he and my sister-in-law were getting on the bus to go to where the balloons were, and a lot of the people there, the volunteers, they have been doing these balloons for years, walking them, and so they get in a position where, hey, you've been doing this for so long, you get to walk the new balloon. Well, they're all kind of eyeing my brother and his wife, and they're saying, which balloon are you walking? They said, well, the Mickey balloon. I said, well, Mickey. And they said, well, you must know somebody. But he got the biggest kick. He said, because he's a big guy. He's like 6'2", 6'3".
Okay.
And they gave him one of the ropes on the outside, so he was really close to the people. Mm-hmm. And says, he'd get all excited when you come around the corner. The kids are getting all excited and they're screaming Mickey's name, and so he's holding onto this big rope. And as he'd walk by, he said, "Go ahead, touch it," and the kids would reach over and just touch the rope, just to give him a thrill.
That's awesome.
And then there were like opportunities. One, one of my sketches was the inspiration for the new Captain Minnie outfit. And then my Mickey's on the front of the Disney Dream. I got to work with another artist on the new Disney, the Disney Wish, where Minnie's on the front of it. So my work is still being seen. In fact, I was looking at my phone today, and I got an email from the Arnold Palmer golf courses on Disney property. And they're talking about these new clubs now. And if you look at, that's my Mickey that's on the club.
Oh, that's great.
So you see, even long after I'm gone, and people, they don't know who does the work. Mm-hmm. But knowing that the guests like it, to me, is the greatest compliment. And I started using Instagram as an opportunity to get my memories down in a form where I can go back and I want to write a book. about my time at Disney and the wonderful things that I got to do. I got to sing the Ballad of Davy Crockett with Fess Parker.
Actually, there was a comment. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there was an Ask Brian about meeting Fess Parker.
Yeah, we had a thing called Disneyana, and it ran for about 10 years. It was the precursor to D23, and we would get about 600 to 800 people that would come, true hardcore Disney fans.
Yeah.
And so, of course, a lot of the legends would show up, and we as the artists, merchandise artists, we had our own fair for the people who come and talk with us and purchase our artwork if they wanted to. And there's this one time, they had a VIP, and we all got to go, the artists. And then there was Mark Davis and Frank and Ollie and Alice Davis and Ward Kimball, and there was Fess Parker. So we went over to him. There was about 5 or 6 of us, and we said, "Hey," they had a camera crew that was videotaping everything, and they said, "Why don't you guys sing the Ballad of Davy Crockett with Fess Parker?" So he was kind of reluctant about doing it, but he said, "Yeah," because he's probably heard it a million times. So we sing it, and it went over well. But until the cameraman said, "Oh, we didn't have the camera on. Could you do it again?" Well, he wasn't too happy about it, but he was very fair about it and kind. And we sang it through again, and I've got a video of it. I've got it on video. So I'll probably be sharing that on Instagram too.
That's awesome too. I actually I think it was like 2 or 3 months ago, rewatched Davy Crockett on
oh, it's great.
Disney Plus, but only the first one. They have the two movies.
There's 3.
3? I thought there were 2. Okay, because there's
I'm pretty sure it's 3.
Okay, you'll know better than me probably.
Yeah, because it's Davy Crockett. Then it was Davy Crockett Goes to Congress, and then there was that Davy at the Alamo.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get back to some comments. So, great painting. That was with the Jaws. And he also said, just watched Jaws recently. It's maybe the perfect movie.
I agree.
Renee says, you should show the Walt photo if it's not too heavy to take off the wall.
Yeah, I could do that.
I mean,
my office is a lot bigger than you think. I've got closets over here and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, mine's very tiny. It's basically what you see.
All right, let me show you this.
Nope. Let me give you the... wow. Yeah. That's
this hung in Ralph Kent's office. Ralph was an executive with Disney. He was the director of WED, which would be the president of Imagineering.
Yeah.
But they called it WED at the time. And Ralph, he was one of only 25 executives that had this hanging in their office.
Wow.
And anyway, Ralph had this hanging in his office. I worked with him for 10 years in the department. And I remember every time I would go in there, I would look at that and say, "Oh man, that's a great piece, Ralph." And sadly, Ralph passed away shortly after he retired at 68. And I remember his wife Linda called, and we were making arrangements to get the information out. And then she said to me, "Brian, is there anything you want of Ralph's?" And I said, "No, Linda. I was just happy to be his friend." And then I said, I said, "That picture of Walt that he had," she said, "It's yours." Before I could even finish, she said, "It's yours." Yeah. And "Are you serious?" And she says, "Yes, it's yours." And so I have it here, and it hangs in my office.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I got some...
Excuse me, that sounds like my phone.
No problem.
No. It was my wife calling.
Oh.
Yeah, she's in the other room.
Taking too long? She needs you inside, or
I don't know.
If you want to text her or something, I get it. I'll talk about.
Yeah. Did you need to talk to me, Green? Yeah. Okay, I'm back.
All right. So just go through a couple more comments. We got Victoria says, so talented. And David says, Brian's Instagram is incredible. And it is, and I'm about to show it. So let me bring it on screen because I'm sure you and I could talk for a long time here, but I don't want to keep you all night. And
yeah, I have to go pick up some people at the airport.
Oh, okay. I won't keep you long then. But I just want to show some of the work, and since I have, I guess, discovered the page for me, basically everything you post has a heart on it for me. It's gorgeous stuff. I mean, I love this indie like Indiana Jones Mickey. This is gorgeous.
That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun.
I want to see if I can find that like Frontier, but before I do, Scrooge. I am one of the biggest Scrooge McDuck fans. I've been reading his comics since I was a kid. I am one of the biggest Carl Barks fans. Obviously Don Rosa stuff. They're one of the main reasons I draw animal characters. It wasn't even the cartoon DuckTales, which I know you never mentioned in front of Don Rosa, but it's just I love those comics so much. I started with animal characters as how I was drawing, but the cowboy. I don't know where that one piece was, but if you have anything specific you'd like me to click on, I'd be happy to click on it, and we can talk about it real quick.
That right there, the Mickey face.
This, I looked, I don't know how long I stared at this, and I actually took a screenshot of this and traced your Mickey a couple of times to try to get the feel.
Yeah, the inspiration for that was Peter Hemsley. Peter Hemsley's work is just beautiful, and so in my own way, I tried to emulate that style. Where there's that appeal to it. Obviously, I could go over this and say, well, this could be done differently, or this could be done better. But again, I go for the appeal.
Yeah. I mean, let's knock that out of the park. This is awesome stuff. Right here, this might be like one of my favorite pieces you did.
Yeah, that was an inspirational drawing for Wilderness Lodge.
Yeah, I love it. Since I know you need to go now, I don't want to keep you, but is there anything else from here you'd like me to show or you want to mention quickly before we wrap up?
I guess what I would say is this: is anyone who wants to be an artist, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a Disney artist, but as long as you push your abilities, you don't give up, and never let anyone tell you no. I mean, you can obviously use it as fuel to make yourself better, because again, the drawings that I did to get onto Disney were clearly not to the level that they should have been. But I used that letter as a way to make myself better, and to constantly. I think it's always good for an artist to constantly strive to be better, because if you ever reach a point where you say, "Oh, that's good, I don't need to do it anymore. I'm perfect," well, then there's a problem there. You've always got to remain hungry.
Yeah, it's so true. Wow. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm going to get wrapped up in looking at your work again. So let me just stop the screen here, and we'll wrap up now. I want to say thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Michael,
for sharing everything that you did. I honestly, you're welcome back anytime. I would love to hear more about more of your stories, more about the work. Even just go through your Instagram and maybe just talk about the artwork that you're posting and the memories you have of creating these. Like the last thing I showed was the Mickey and Minnie that dressed as chefs. That was for the Food and Wine Festival from maybe a year or two ago, which My wife and I collect merch from that. Actually, we're going down in November, the week before the closing of the Food and Wine. So we are going to make sure to head. Actually, Epcot's the only park we're going to. We're going to do a few other things down in Orlando with the Disney properties, but we're only going to Epcot for the Food and Wine specifically. That is our goal.
Awesome.
But yeah, so anyway, thanks for coming on.
Thank you,
guys, everyone. Thank you who tuned in and watched. Everyone who's going to watch in the future, thank you for watching. Don't forget to follow the Wiz. My hand's always weird here. The Wiz Comic on Instagram and Facebook. And thank you for tuning in. I'll be back next week with another guest. We'll be talking comics about something. Let's just take a look. Last comment. Great show, Michael. I love your energy and appreciation for Disney Magic. Thank you for featuring my dad. Anytime. Listen, I am. Cool. You're right. It's Disney Magic. It's just art in general. This is what I say. I call my pencil my magic wand because, I feel I create magic every time I put my pencil to paper. I feel that that's one of the reasons I draw a wizard story, is because it's about magic to me. That's what art is. It's a magical way to escape reality and go into other worlds and just, no matter how you're feeling, be happy for a moment, laugh for a moment, escape from whatever the world problems are, and that's
absolutely.
So that's what it is, and Disney really brings that to life. It is magical. So thank you for being a part of that. Thank you for probably designing half the stuff I own in my apartment.
Well, thank you for having me on here, Mike.
Anytime. I'll talk to you soon. All right.
Very good. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.